Hello, Mate to Thrive Nation. I'm in a special place, really quite emotional because I've just seen and encountered a man and a business that's really about sustainability, about regeneration, about rejuvenation, about our planet and our earth. I think of my daughter, my 6-year-old, and there is hope for a brave new world in the future. I am a skeptic and someone who looks at what's happening to our earth with sadness, but there are people that are bringing hope. We want to spread this word far and as wide as we can. So I do want to welcome Angus McIntosh, Farmer Angus, to the Mate to Thrive show.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. What a privilege to be here, and I've just seen your operation. We've encountered the egg mobiles, and we've just seen how the soil can actually be just totally rejuvenated and restored and replenished by the ecosystem, by animals and humans together coming in, I don't know, in combination or synergistically, not to deplete and devoid our planet of its natural resources. So I want to just start off with Angus McIntosh's sort of your background, where you grew up, why you are doing this. You're one of the pioneers here. You've been doing it for a long time in terms of regenerative agriculture. So tell us a bit about your background.
Steve, so I grew up in KZN, although I would spend half the year in KZN and half the year in Cape Town. My father was in Parliament, and I had a very conventional upbringing. I went to my class for high school. I studied at Stellenbosch University. I studied management accounting. I managed eventually to get a job at Goldman Sachs. I was an equity salesman. So I was very much in this sort of English-speaking Western thought bubble, which over time, since I've been 30, I've been unwinding and unlearning. And that's been the very sort of, that's been one of the themes in my life has been, I've learned something, I have to unlearn something, okay? Why are we here? We're here because I decided to quit Goldman Sachs back in 2004. They wanted me to go to Tokyo to do a thing called derivative sales, because I was very much going down that line. I loved my time there. Great friends. I drank the Kool-Aid. I totally believed it, like I believe regenerative agriculture today. And so there wasn't a Damascene conversion. There's a very slow process of change that took place. And I think the first thing was when I turned 30, I was still working at Goldman. Someone said to me, "Stop eating wheat." What are you talking about? Up till then, and only in hindsight did I realize, but up till then I believed a whole lot of things. Doesn't matter what you eat, what you drink, what you think, what you say, what you do. There's a pill to fix everything. England won the Second World War with the help of the Americans. Capitalism is the greatest force for good that's ever been. Okay. Ancestral people knew nothing. Humans are at the pinnacle today of all things. These are all things we have subsequently discovered are lies, mostly. And we can go into each one of those individually if you're interested. But that was I think what shook the foundation was I stopped eating wheat, and two things happened. The first thing is I felt really good. I mean, I was already feeling good, but I felt even better. And that was like weird that you can do something in your diet to actually influence how you feel. And the second is I realized how much wheat I was taking in. I'd have for cereal, you entertain clients, a little cookie. Have a bun at lunch, another meeting in the afternoon, sandwich or whatever, pasta for dinner. There's 5 times a day you've taken wheat in. And that was a shocking thing. And only years later have I realized the danger with modern wheat. And we can go into that if you want. Wheat in and of itself is not the problem. It's like people say cattle are a terrible thing. It's not the cow, it's the how. It's how far we've come removed from the original. There's a biblical, and I think it's in all the sacred texts, the land of milk and honey. The milk you buy in the shops today is not the same thing. And neither is the honey, actually.
Yeah, for sure.
But
you stopped having wheat. Someone said stop eating wheat.
Yes.
But then you moved from the personal to the public, or you moved from sort of pain to purpose. What was that transition? There must have been something that ignited you to say, okay, I'm going to say no to sort of traditional Western career, and I'm actually going to go back to my roots, and I'm going to offer this publicly to people because I'm more concerned about the greater good than just myself.
So, Steve, I had no intention of farming when I quit Goldman Sachs. Absolutely no intention of farming. We quit because our second child had just been born in London. The only promotion opportunity was to Tokyo. We didn't want our kids growing up on the 23rd floor of a building in Tokyo.
Okay.
Partly because my wife had a semi-rural upbringing. I had a very rural upbringing until I was about 8 or 9. And I think when you have kids and you had a happy childhood, you want the same for them.
Yeah.
If I'd been born in New York City, in Manhattan, I lived in Manhattan all my life, I'd want my kids to grow up in Manhattan. So I think that was one of the motivating factors. We then quit the whole thing, big decision. We came back. We managed to get an opportunity to build on the Spier Wine Estate in Stellenbosch. We met 5 different architects. We really hit it off with one who said, you're going to build a clay house. Like, whoa, dude. And it's going to be straw as well. So we told him the story of the 3 little pigs. He's like, don't worry, I've heard this many times. And so we built a clay home.
Sure.
And built a few other buildings. And that was another thing further along the route to talk about environmentalism and understand this stuff. And then I started playing with permaculture and biodynamics. I resurrected a vineyard. I started making wine. But it was in June of 2008 that I read a book called The Omnivore's Dilemma. Are you familiar with it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Michael Pollan's book.
Yeah.
And it was amazing because I read about Joel Salatin, who ironically is on Spier now and is doing a conference in the next 2 days. It's just crazy that you and I are having this conversation and Joel's here for the first time. So I put the book down and I said to my wife, I want to be like Joel. And we've paid millions of rands in school fees. There's certain businesses which are still struggling. Others are doing well. We're learning every day. I mean, you saw it this morning.
Yeah.
We've got a new challenge on the pig front. Yeah. So, and then the next step in the sort of migration was not only do I believe in the regenerative agriculture movement, it just resonated with me deeply. And I think one of the ills in society is our educational system is very intellectual. Whereas human beings, and this is where I definitely agree with Rudolf Steiner, with the guy behind the Waldorf schools and a lot of other movements, is that the human is a threefold human being: head, heart, and hands. And the education system needs to support all of that. But it doesn't. Yeah. The education system is purely about the intellect. And when you go solely into the intellect, you lose all your context. That's why we've ended up with the earth in the mess that it is. Because we live in an intellectually dominated world. And intellect is deemed the be-all and end-all.
Sure.
So I would love to know your views on how we unwind that, if you think it's a problem.
Okay. No, I think it's a huge problem, and I think that's where we're physical, emotional, mental, spiritual beings, and we have to look at it holistically. But then take us to some incredible stories, either about the land, how it's improved, either about people's lives that you've touched, either in your personal family, that people can sort of grab hold onto a narrative and a story of, actually, I see myself as part of it. Either the health of my family, either the land that I'm really concerned about, either just public health in general, because we are losing the war against chronic disease, that's for sure. Whether you're in South Africa or America, 1 in 2 Americans has a chronic disease. More than 2 out of 4 Americans have I think, about 3 or 4 chronic diseases. So it's crazy stuff what's out there. And we are losing it exponentially on the curve.
Correct.
You know? So we need to change that, and we need to all become part of it. We're all not going to become farmers, but we can have a little farming patch.
Yes.
You know, we can grow our own things biodynamically and those things. So give us some stories that people can hold on to.
So Steve, in answer to your question, the guiding principle for us and how we engage people and how we've made our community bigger over time has been Wendell Berry's statement, which is we are all farmers by proxy. It means that every single human is a farmer, at least every single human who can choose what they eat. Because the food that you chose today was produced by someone. You have authorized that farmer to farm in the way that he or she deems appropriate. So you're a farmer. Everyone's a farmer.
By proxy. You're not growing yourself as a farmer, but actually you're either supporting regenerative agriculture or you're supporting traditional industry that's destroying our environment.
It's 100% what it is. So that's like the guiding thing. The second thing is Vandana Shiva. I'm not sure if you know who she is, and you'll be mesmerized when you see her stuff online. She says human beings are committing species-wide suicide. Zach Bush, who you're meeting next week, is of the view that in 60 years there won't be humans left on Earth. Okay? I can't dispute what they're saying, but I do think that there won't be a total apocalypse. I think a few of us are going to survive.
Are we all moving to Spier?
No, well, can possibly, but there will be centers around the world that are like that. Now, I was in America recently. America, which is the place that's given birth to this disaster, which is conventional agriculture. They birthed Monsanto, they birthed all these things. The regenerative agriculture movement there is amazing and strong and community. I mean, there's this valley in Tennessee, which was just insane.
And what about the whole thing that these big industry guys are buying up land and they want to convert it?
Of course they're trying. Because they're in this mindset, you know, who's the biggest landowner apparently in the US now is Gates. Okay? What does Gates want to do? I read an article this morning where they quote him saying, we have to do everything we can to make sure lab meat is the answer because of the environmental destruction. Meanwhile, the exact opposite is true. The plant-based vegan movement is a total disaster for the environment. And I'd love us to talk a bit more about that just now. But you just asked about change.
Yeah, let's talk about change.
Let's talk about change. So the first step, this is how I think about things. The first step is you have to recognize there's a problem.
Now, we know there's a problem, health of the environment
Steve,
and health of us.
Steve, you've just said we know.
Yeah.
You are assuming we know. You will not believe how few people actually know. And more than that, how people are prepared to admit that there's a problem.
Are you saying educated or not educated or rural people? Because the people in my view, they know every second person is getting cancer. Every second person's got an autoimmune disease.
Let's look at academia. Does academia admit there's a problem?
No, I think they don't admit that. They know there's a problem.
Does mainstream media admit that there's a problem?
They know there's a problem, but they're not actually admitting.
Does mainstream media? Yeah. If you read The Economist, Wall Street Journal, you know, New Yorker, whichever bling clever organization is, CNN, they'll tell you the human beings are at the pinnacle. We've never had it so good. They are in total denial about what there is. So the first step is to admit that there's a problem. Then the second step is what are the solutions? So our solution is, in the words of Buckminster Fuller, don't focus on the old, build the new. And that's exactly what you do, Steve. You're building a new community. Okay? Right. Exactly what you do. So let's just say, how do we build a new? What are we focused on? We focused on 3 legs: financial, ecological, and social. And how do we measure profitability or success necessarily in those things? So we can talk about the social thing. We're employing more people than we did when we started. They are earning probably double what they do than when they started. There's more cars on the farm owned by staff than when we started. Okay? I sold 85% of my egg business to my staff 2.5 years ago. Not one of them has a matric. They're all reading income statements. I mean, they're not accountants, but they can understand what an income statement means now. Okay? So we are on a constantly empowering process. You participated in our circle this morning. Okay? There's a reason we make a circle and not a square. There's a reason we say our names and not my name is Steve. I am Steve. Okay? There's a whole lot of other things I can go into in what the purpose and function of that circle is. Okay? That's about the social side. The financial side, we've had businesses that have done well and businesses that have been a disaster. Okay? And some were good and now are not. And so we're constantly having to juggle with that. COVID was a nightmare for us because it closed the restaurant and hotel trade. So it's forced us to go to big retail. In hindsight, big retail's been amazing. So I personally can tell you that I've been treated really well by big retail. Okay. They have a bad reputation because they abuse a lot of their suppliers. But in my case, I've been well looked after. This is Checkers and Pick and Pay, who I do business with nationally on the cured meat side. So the financial, social, ecological. I'm simplifying things. I like to simplify things. What is the measure of ecological profitability? For me, at its simplest level, are you increasing the carbon in your soils? I know carbon is getting a lot of, because of ESG and people reacting to ESG, they're throwing the baby out of the bathwater. They're trying to pretend carbon's not a problem. But carbon wasn't the only problem, right? So there's been a lot of bad press against carbon there's a blowback against the environmental movement because they've, in my opinion, given the wrong message the wrong way. But carbon, why do we even need to say the words carbon? Because we are carbon beings. This is a carbon planet. So if we don't know about carbon, we have no interest in our planet. Carbon is a scaffolding of life. Carbon is what's keeping you and me together.
Absolutely.
So, where's the best and safest place for carbon? In the soil. What does modern agriculture do? Takes it out of the soil and pushes it in the atmosphere. We were the first farm in the whole world to be paid carbon credits in 2014 for increasing the carbon content in the pastures where the cattle graze. It happened again in 2017, again in 2020, and it'll happen again next year. And I actually started a business in September to help other farms get paid for that. And as I said to you earlier today, it's been an amazingly exciting thing to do because despite all this negativity in the world and all the horrible things that are going on, to work with people who are genuinely making a difference, ecologically and socially, it's wonderful. It's literally the remedy for my negativity.
And then that results in actually financial success and achievement, because if you get the social and the ecological, what's been shown now, especially by someone like Joel Salatin and yourself, is it does make financial sense in the long term.
There's another angle to the financial thing which we should touch on, and that is true cost accounting. So I'm a management accountant by training. I worked for Goldman Sachs for years. I did 5 years of accounting study. Not once does anybody talk about true cost accounting. I'm not saying accountants are idiots. I'm not. They're bright people.
Yeah. Narrow-minded.
They're horses that have got blinkers on. That horse can run fast and run for long. They've got blinkers on. We need to take the blinkers off. But what's that going to involve? They changed the educational system. So my kids were in the Waldorf Primary School, and then they went to conventional high school. The difference in those education systems is amazing. Conventional is all about intellect. Waldorf's like, let's balance things.
Yeah.
Let's not say intellect is not there, but let's talk about thinking, willing, and feeling. Okay, you run 11 comrades. You have willpower, but that's not assuming everyone else has.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, but those will forces inside you, you've got to cultivate and work at.
Yeah.
Okay, what does the modern education system do? It doesn't even think. No, don't even use those words. And then feeling. Okay, how do you feel? So thinking, willing, and feeling. Head, heart, hands.
Brilliant.
That thing. So that is where I think those are like the meta changes that we need to make. We need to become more human in our educational system and in our value system.
Okay, good. Well, let's go to regenerative agriculture.
Okay.
What does that actually mean, or regenerative farming?
Okay, so to the point by the way, I learned relatively recently that is a ladybird larva. Because I was embarrassing. I was down at Spier, and there was hundreds of these things, and I was getting irritated with them. I was sort of wiping them off the table, and then someone pointed out that little ugly mutt is a ladybird larva. That's going to become a gorgeous ladybird.
Wow.
How cool is that?
For those that are listening, you can check out the YouTube video. We've got a little insect here called a ladybird larva.
Steve's herding a ladybird larva across the table. Regenerative agriculture.
Yes.
Okay, so I alluded earlier to the fact that we're all farmers by proxy. The responsibility of that is immense because farmers are either farming destructively or regeneratively. Okay? And that's not in dispute. What has been the result of this? Well, there's lots of results. The main result, which you've just spoken about, is a sick human race. A human race that is incapable, and I have to agree, all you need to look at, Steve, is cancer rates, women's egg counts, male sperm counts.
Yeah, crashing. Testosterone crashing. Autoimmune exponentially increasing.
As a breeder of livestock, okay, if you don't breed for fertility, it's over. Okay. How have we got there? We've polluted our environment. Primarily through agriculture. Of course, we've also polluted it with plastics, with cell phones, you know, all that EMFs, and you've got amazing insights into the sun and light, and all of that. Agriculture is also part of that drama.
Absolutely.
So not only has the conventional agriculture system failed in terms of feeding people, it's not feeding anybody, it's making them sick. The exact opposite of feeding. And the second thing is it's destroying the environment. So, you know, we don't have hours to chat, but for me the biggest visual to think about the destructive impact of agriculture is to think of two things. The first is the rainforests. How many soccer fields of rainforest are lost every hour of every day in the world?
Tell me.
Guess, Brood.
10.
36.
36. 36 soccer fields of rainforest every hour.
Of every day.
That's a lot of soccer fields.
It's a lot of land, eh? It's a lot of animals that don't have homes. It's a lot of biodiversity gone, and it's a hell of a lot of oxygen that we need to live. They've taken away the ability to do that. But it gets worse. What do you do with the rainforest? What do? They replace it, and they plant 4 crops. Palm oil, soya, maize, and sugar. What is the common denominator of a few common denominators of those 4? What are they?
They're mostly toxic to the human race. Yeah. Especially the way that they've been farmed and grown
in monocultures.
Correct.
Which are destructive to the environment.
Yeah.
They're inflammatory.
Correct.
Now, you're a doctor, right? You know, I'm not a doctor. But what I do know is that almost every disease today is inflammatory.
Yeah. Almost correct. And especially your seed oils, your vegetable oils, those things that
Grain-fed
cause
beef,
inflammation.
dude.
Yeah.
The omega-6 and 3 ratio is completely out.
Yeah, we've done it
so people
over-
eating beef
yeah.
and they're just it's being inflammatory.
Yeah, we see the markers that are the ratio is totally out. I've done at least over 500 tests. We see that the omega-6s are really, really high compared to the omega-3s. That's causing significant issues, significant problems.
Inflammatory. Okay?
Yeah.
So and then there's glyphosate. How much do you talk, or how much does your community chat about glyphosate?
We know. We've had Stephanie Sonef on. We speak about glyphosate. We know that I think in the States, 80% of air and water is filled with glyphosate. South Africa is not very different to those figures.
South Africa will be more, because we're the only country in the world where the staple diet is genetically modified for glyphosate, for GMOs. So for those who don't know what glyphosate is, basically, it's the most widely used agricultural chemical of all time. It's in every human being that's been tested for it, it's 93% have it in their blood and urine. Okay, it's in breast milk, it's everywhere. It's used on all crops because it's so powerful. What it does, the first patent was 1964. It was patented as a chelator. So in other words, they had these huge boilers, industrial boilers, and the boilers were locking up, clogging, and the guys are like, what's going on? Minerals. Invented glyphosate, put it into those boilers, clean. So it binds through what they call the metalloproteins, zinc, manganese, molybdenum, copper, iron, all of those guys. That's what it's doing in your body.
It's demineralizing you.
Yes. When they plant GMO, they call it Roundup Ready soya, not only they give the seed company gives them Roundup Ready, Roundup, which is glyphosate, they give them the soya, and then they give them a pack of minerals. But the farmers haven't put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah.
Because again, we're living in a world where we're only looking at a tomato. It looks like a tomato. It doesn't have the nutritional benefit of a tomato. We don't understand how it's been grown. Okay?
Yeah.
So again, we've lost context. We need to go wider from narrower. And I think that is not an intellectual exercise. It's here. I mean, Steve, you place every single intellectual fact on the table. People still don't change. Something has to happen.
Sure, it does. It has to change within,
change.
but then also industry is making it very, very difficult, making it really hard. It does not start with this enslavement to finances, because once they enslave you to finances, then you're running on this sort of wheel, this rat running on this wheel to say, I don't have the time to go to the farmer's market and actually buy. I just got to buy conveniently.
You're surviving.
Correct. Instead of thriving.
Literally trying to survive. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a very difficult space to be in. You know, you and I have this amazing luxury. It's a Friday morning.
Yeah.
We've been driving around the farm, you know, letting out chickens. Other oaks had to get in their car at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Or to miss the traffic, they can get the car at 5:45. Drive, sit at the office.
Yeah. But then it starts with the education system, as you said, and who people are, not enslaved to finances, not enslaved to traditional sort of education systems, not enslaved to big pharma, because people have got that understanding of pharma's going to fix everything. I just need to take a pill.
Exactly.
Instead of actually looking at the body as a
And
healing
it is
mechanism.
so powerful, that drive.
Yeah.
But it's the fear thing.
So, but people
And
can
that was
then buy
amazing.
from the right farmers or the right produce. They can make a choice. So
can
they're
sort-
farmers by proxy.
And
Okay.
Steve, they can grow their own food,
Yeah.
man.
Well, tell us about that.
Dude.
Who's going to
in the
institute
back-
and educate
In the
that?
back of your yard, a little vegetable garden, but don't even be that ambitious. Just start by doing this. Take your organic food waste. I mean, it's not organic, your food waste, except for meat, citrus, and garlic and onions, and feed them to earthworms. Buy a little earthworm farm, and you create the greatest fertilizer of all, with the greatest plant food, which is vermicompost. Okay? And then get a little couple of pot plants and plant a little bit of seeds of basil. Just
Start
grow
like
your own
that,
basil.
yeah.
It'll be the most delicious basil you've eaten. Grow some carrots.
So no
Even got some
fertilizers, no
tomato-
herbicides,
just
none of that.
Earthworm
Just
compost, the waste from your food. And then that's how people conscientize to go, waste is a human construct. Nature doesn't waste.
Yeah.
Waste is a human construct. And then that basil will be the most delicious basil you've eaten. And then if you produce too much, well, then you make pesto.
But that takes time and energy, Angus, and that's the key. Where
Sure.
people are not they're
On the
on the
On
edge,
the edge.
and they
Absolutely.
just
Look, Steve, the great hope would be that the government would step into its role. In my opinion, the role of governments is to make sure that the population has the healthiest living environment imaginable.
yeah, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually.
Absolutely. The full environment.
Yeah.
So your job as the government is to take stress away. So you have to crush bureaucracy. You have to crush crime in the South African context. Crush it. You have to legislate for healthy foods.
Yeah.
No glyphosate allowed.
But in our context, those things are probably not going to happen. So we're
No,
building
of course they're not gonna
communities.
happen. That's the only way.
Because it's financially sort of motivated. So you and I are going to build communities to make it easier for people to adopt these things
Correct.
in place. So let's go back to the definition of regenerative agriculture. 'Cause someone wants to know exactly what that means and what they're buying
So
into.
the regenerative agriculture is a broad church. They are, and I'm sorry to sound like Joel Salatin, but it's true that that's a broad church because there are slightly different definitions of regenerative agriculture. Okay. There's guys who practice permaculture.
What is permaculture?
Permaculture is a small scale, very clever system for it's for home food. It's amazing.
Okay. So
It's
someone
not-
can adopt that out there
It's
listening.
Anybody,
Okay. How much
literally-
space do you need, or how much
tiny bit of space. Permaculture is insane.
and time?
Very little time, but you just spend less time on your cell phone.
Okay. No, I just want to know because people are going to come with these questions. They're going to ask me, Steve, you're talking about
if it's
the
plants
ideal.
you want to grow, you feed them twice a day or feed them once a day. And if you create this little ecosystem, the plants feed each other.
Okay.
Permaculture is insane. Okay?
All right. So you're talking 10 squares?
Yeah, you can do it in 10 squares. You can
Okay.
do it in 100 squares.
Okay.
In a
So
1,000
people
squares.
in Johannesburg or
In
big
Johannesburg,
cities,
people can do permaculture.
they can do permaculture.
No question.
And they contact the Permaculture Institute of South Africa for guidance or courses or
Correct.
what?
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly that.
Brilliant.
So permaculture is one form of it. Organic agriculture is regenerative.
Okay.
My definition of regenerative agriculture is that it is improving the environment. The animals are healthier, the soil has more carbon, which means as soon as you increase carbon in the soil, it's the start of a virtuous circle, a cascade of joy. Number one, the soil holds more water. Number two, the soil holds more nutrients. Number three, the plants growing in that soil are healthier. The animals eating the plants are healthier. The humans eating the animals are healthier. Society is healthier.
Brilliant.
You're talking about community. For me, the template of community is there's a couple of factors that have to be involved. People need to buy into it. But their sovereignty needs to be protected and respected. So this place I was talking about in Tennessee, there's the valley. Those guys get together on a Sunday and they have a lunch together, and whoever brings food. But the auto mechanics down the road, so you can chat to them and maybe get. They've got a mechanic there, they've got an electrician there, they've got this farmer doing this farmer doing this. Once a week, they get together and the kids are running around and they share that. They share around food. It's very powerful to share around food.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so that's what they do. The other thing, in my opinion, is we need to go to Western A Price's work and understand what ancestral nutrition is. Because the modern conception is the old people had it terribly. Well, I wouldn't be so sure about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay? If they made it past the first few years of childbirth, they lived a long life into the 70s, but they lived a healthy life.
Yeah.
Their teeth were perfect. Their arches were perfect. They conceived without assistance. They gave birth without assistance. They didn't shunt their old people into old age homes. No. Old people were fully integrated into society.
And strong and healthy and added value.
Exactly. They had no antidepressants. Imagine that.
Yeah.
They had no prisons. And Western Price documented this. He traveled for 10 years around the world finding societies like this on every single continent in the world. Every single continent in the world. Ancestral nutrition.
Ancestral living together.
Ancestral living
Honoring
together.
one another. Saying, Sawubona, I see you.
Yes, I see you.
And you see me.
Yes. You have multi-generational things. Yeah. So we live in this world where everything's compartmentalized.
Yeah. Because the I has become more important than the we.
Like that. Really like that.
And I think of the old African, proverb, I am because we are. And I think that together, this integrated, we are connecting, our fields are connecting, our purposes are connecting, our families are connecting, we're connecting to the animals, your dogs, the hens this morning. That connection is so powerful. And that's probably what we need to restore for people to realize, actually, I'm not only concerned about myself, but I'm concerned about the environment, my parents, the children, the next generation. For those things to change. So continue with regenerative agriculture. So you said permaculture,
so permaculture,
organic
is the definition of that. Biodynamics falls within that. Biodynamic agriculture is inspired by Rudolf Steiner.
Tell us about that.
So the first assumption within biodynamics is that the farm has to be organically farmed.
Okay.
That's the first thing.
But what do you mean by that? Because people are going to ask that question.
So you do not use poisons.
Okay. No herbicides, no pesticides, nothing like that.
Nematicides, larvicides, fungicides. They all side. CIDE, death. Okay. They're on the wrong side. They're on the side of the agricultural chemical company, not on the side of the farmer. Okay. So, but then biodynamics takes it quite a bit further. Biodynamics says the biodynamic ideal is to create your fertility on the farm. So our chicken operation couldn't actually be a biodynamic operation because we don't grow the food for the chickens on the farm.
Okay, I'm with you.
Okay, that's the ideal. Vegetables and cattle, so example, is a much easier thing to do in a biodynamic manner.
Because you can feed them with the food.
But in addition to that, for me, so again, every biodynamicist will tell you that there's a slightly different angle to it. Another thing is that, and I've already spoken about this earlier, but I just didn't say it was biodynamic, is this issue of social, ecological, financial.
Sure.
Head, heart, hands, 3 legs, stands on 3 legs. Okay. Then there is a recognition, and this is what a lot of people focus on, but it's not actually, it's one of the elements of biodynamics, is what they call, what they refer to what goes on in the cosmos and its relation to what goes on Earth.
Yeah.
So for example, every surfer knows that the ocean is very different at full moon and new moon.
Yeah.
So what's happening there? The moon is exerting a force on the water. What percentage of plants is water? 97%. Okay. To think that the moon is not doing something to plants.
Or the sun.
What is ignorant.
Exactly. The solar light is crucially important. We know that if you're sitting in South Africa and you're eating something that's grown in the equator with the wrong solar light, you're causing a mismatch in the biomagnetic field. So eating something out of season, I mean, our ancestors knew this. It has to do with the electromagnetic fields. Because you're receiving the same light, but now you're telling your body you're eating something that's received a different solar light.
100%. But none of the economists would be able to follow. None of the people taught at university are following your discussion. That's not how they taught.
Yeah.
Compartmentalized, efficiency.
Correct.
Okay? So a recognition that what goes on above the earth has an impact on what goes on in the earth. And that then translates into planting calendars. You know, my most successful pasture plantings were in the 3 days before full moon. But not only that, and then you transplant on a down moon because the forces are pulling down. So you germinate on an up moon and down moon. But it's more complicated than that.
People don't, it's just biodynamic. Eh?
This is an element of biodynamics.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's not exclusive to biodynamics.
Okay.
So the moon is not only going waxing or waning, it's moving up and down through the planets.
Yeah.
And then there's a third element to the moon, and that is the orbit of the moon. So the earth is round, but the moon's orbit is an elliptical shape.
Yes.
So there are times when the moon is further from the earth and times when the moon is closer to the earth. So if it's full moon and it's at apogee, which is right close to the earth, so perigee, and apogee is furthest away from the earth. If it's full moon, your fungal and full moon and the moon is right by the earth, the fungal disease pressure at full moon is so much more than when it's not there. Okay?
Wow.
Is the moon always in the same place in the sky?
No.
Is the moon the only body in the sky?
No.
I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
It's a whole world you can investigate. Steve, the first counter to when people say that is, oh, what nonsense, you can't measure it. Because that's kind of, we live in this world where everything has to be measured.
It's reductionist in thinking. If we can't measure it, we can't manage it.
You can't manage it, doesn't exist. Okay. So my response to that group of scientists is, Mr. Scientist, do you love your wife 11.35
exactly.
grams or do you love her 11.25 grams?
And can you measure love?
And the scientist goes, "Buh, buh, 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 buh,
Yeah.
can't measure love. Mr. Scientist, have you told your wife you don't love her?
Yeah.
Because you can't measure it. The fact that you can't measure something today,
Doesn't mean it doesn't exist and it's not important.
exactly. Okay, this idea that the only reality is you and me right now talking is nonsense.
Absolutely.
But no, very few people have the humility to accept that.
So that's regenerative agriculture.
So regenerative, there's biodynamics, there's some people call it agroecology. At the heart of regenerative agriculture is animals. And I would like, before we go, just touch on the whole vegan story.
Go for it.
Because for me, there's three things about the vegan movement. And it comes back to why animals are so critical, or animals are the cornerstone, the foundation of regenerative agriculture. Without animals, you can't regenerate. So I like to think of the vegan movement as the good of the vegan movement, the bad of the vegan movement, and the tragedy of the vegan movement.
Okay.
So the good of the vegan movement is more people today are aware of caged animal agriculture.
Yeah. Powerful.
That's the good.
And animal abuse,
Everything.
exploitation of animals.
Absolutely. No, full kudos to them for that. The bad of the vegan movement is that there's more animals in cages today than there've ever been. So on that front, they've completely failed. The second bad is the ecological impact of the vegan movement. And then the third thing of the vegan movement is what I refer to as body count. Okay, so let's just talk about the ecological impact.
Because this is disputable and I'm going to get a lot of vegan.
Sure, boo. Hoi.
Yeah, you got to come and tell me and just give me your
I'm ready,
argument
bro.
if
I'm
someone
ready.
was sitting here.
I'm absolutely ready
Go
for it. There's no vegan farm that's increased the carbon in its soils. Mine has, through cattle. But we'll come back.
Yeah.
First thing is Cornell University does a study in America. They look at the methane emissions of the US fertilizer industry. Now, any person who's remotely related to anything environmental hears methane, then they go, fuck.
Yeah.
It's a problem. Okay? The US fertilizer industry, which is one industry in America, emits 3 times more methane than all industries in the USA combined.
Sure. That's a problem.
It's a big problem. The second thing is that the vegan staple, what's the vegan protein? Is soya. Where they plant soya? In the Brazilian rainforest. What else is in 50% of all foods and is also in all vegan foods? Palm oil. That's the Indonesian rainforest. Okay?
Which are both toxic to the system.
Disaster. Then we talk about body count. This is number of beings and animals killed by vegans versus me, who kills a grass-fed beef cow. Okay. look, let's just take, you can take a hectare, you can take 10 hectares, whatever monocultures, they plant 100 hectares, 1,000 hectares of wheat or maize. The first time those animals are killed is when they prepare the land. They plow the rubbish out of it, eh? So those animals are dead. And they spray. So all insects, birds, bees, plant, rodents, vertebrates, dead.
Sure.
Then they spray with pre-emergent herbicides and pesticides. They kill more.
All the earthworms are gone.
Everything. Beings. I'm talking body count.
Yeah.
Body count. Yeah. Then the plant grows, same thing. Spray, 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 spray. Harvest time, you thinking that combine harvest is only sucking in a wheat stalk. No, bro. Any living being that's in there. Oh. And then when they've harvested it, it's a desert. And all those animals starve because there's no food. So that's the bad. 3 big bads.
Yeah.
And then what's the tragedy of the vegan movement? The tragedy is that it's been hijacked by big food. The tragedy is that big food has said, hallelujah. We're pushing the world to plant-based and lab-grown meat. Why? Because it's hugely processed, which means it's shelf life stable for a year. So I don't have any retail pushback. Highly processed stuff that is waste that I can't really do anything with. Now I can make money out of it. Massively high margin. Oh, and I'm making you feel good because it's off the environment.
Yeah.
So they are not honest that they've been hijacked, completely hijacked by big food. It's a tragedy. A movement that started out as deep love and care for animals is now completely destructive.
And that's the big sort of vegan movement. But you do get those vegans that are going to farmers markets. They're growing their own,
Of course.
So within that, there's always caveats and exceptions.
Absolutely, but this is the thing. We have to live in a world where there's subtleties and things involved.
Absolutely.
But I mean, this is more your field than mine. Yeah. My biggest client of bone broth is a shop in Cape Town. Yeah. Who buys all the bone broth? Long-term vegans and vegetarians. Yeah. Their bodies are disintegrated without animal protein. Yeah. I'm not for one moment justifying cage animal agriculture. There's no place for it.
There's no place for industrialization of that.
No place.
And it is destroying the environment if you
and
farm
making the
like
humans
that.
sick.
And making the humans sick.
Absolutely.
Which is what part of their plan in
There's
terms
no justification
of
for it.
moving from big agriculture to big pharma. So then we've got a solution because you're sick now. So now we give big pharma huge profits. So the whole thing is working as a brilliant cycle and circle for them.
Again, it comes down to this philosophy. The overall philosophy of capitalism is that the human being is a mine.
Yeah, is a resource.
How can we mine it?
Yeah. Just as
and not only mine it whilst it's living, we'll mine it in utero.
Yeah. But we won't kill it because that doesn't serve us. So we'll just weaken it.
Come close to killing it.
And enslave it.
And mine the
You're just a
human being.
battery. That's exactly what
you are.
And
then right at the end of its life, when it should be dying, that's when, I was talking to some old friend of mine yesterday, the father's 93, the amount of money that's being spent on this guy. Apparently 85% of the money spent on humans in their lives, in health is spent the last 5 years of their lives.
Yeah. Well, that's because that 90-year-old was probably healthy for a long time and now it's trying to sustain life. The problem is now we're seeing it starting earlier and earlier. People are getting sicker earlier. The millennials men are the weakest generation of all time. In the last 20 years, they've lost 50% of their testosterone. 50% in the last 20 years. That's why a 7-year-old now has got the same testosterone.
For Pfizer and Viagra, bro.
Of course, exactly.
So, what makes you hopeful, Steve? Because you're a positive. I mean, I've only just met you. You're a positive guy. What makes you hopeful?
I'm very optimistic because of the communities that have developed worldwide. Running the podcast for the last 2 years, 128 episodes so far, and to connect with people like you, the collective consciousness is there is hope if we can gather together, honor one another, see one another, and just recognize the value that each of one of us brings. We've got a unique purpose, we've got a unique calling, and I think people are saying no. I think they've seen sickness, they've seen enslavement to sort of financial sort of companies and industry. They don't want this enslavement in all areas of life. And I think true freedom is to sit within a collective community and say, I'm part of this tribe and I bring my uniqueness, my kids and the next generation. So I think that's exciting. Of course, I think the darkness is rising, but the light is rising at the same time. And I think Africa gives me a lot of hope, because I think it's much easier to gather around places like this with not so much involvement from like big industry and big sort of companies. Africans in their heart are really like tribal. They're very community oriented. Yes, they've lost their way to a large degree because of big industry and money and corruption and all those things.
Urbanization.
I think there's a few things we need to cover. Number one, why are you optimistic with regards to regenerative agriculture, and just what is possible for people listening out there? Because I know people are going to be asking, well, what can I do? Yes, you can buy from the right farmers. Yes, you can have your own crops at home, or your own little garden, your permacultural sort of patch. But tell me your sort of hope in the future and where you're going.
So I'm optimistic because there are enough people who are working to make a solution. I happen to believe that a lot of people are going to die in the next 50, 60 years, like Zach Bush and Vanana Shiva have said. And I've made peace with that fact. Okay? But the people who are making a positive change are amazing. And it's wonderful to work with them. I started this new carbon company of mine, and there's farmers doing very interesting things. So I believe that the biggest change in all of this is going to come when we start valuing nutrient-dense food. When the retailers go, we are producing quality and not quantity. When we stop wasting 40% of the food that's produced, because it's an apple that's got a little black mark on. I was at the fruit farmer yesterday. If they have a mark that size on the plum, it's out. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Okay? We have to start valuing things like that.
And how are we going to start valuing that? Because is it going to be primarily through education? Is it going to be primarily through
There's not
community?
one silver bullet, Steve. There's not a silver bullet. There's constant communication on different levels. There's bringing people to farms. There's empowering them. There's getting to listen to podcasts. There's bringing kids to schools. Children are an interesting thing. I have probably once every 2 weeks, there's a group of school children come to the farm.
Well, tell us about the situation in South Africa with regards to regenerative farms. Is it growing? Are people interested? In the next 10 years, is it going to be part of 20% of agriculture in South Africa?
Okay. So
or is
regenerative agriculture is very much a fringe movement in South Africa. Okay. However, to quote an American, nature bats last. Nature is forcing even the most hardcore chemical farmers to become more biological. It just is.
How's that happening?
Well, because with constant use of fertilizer, you've depleted your soil so much that they fall over. So you have to bring biology back. Okay. So slowly but surely, those guys are coming around to it. Are they going to come around in time enough? That's not clear. Okay. That's not clear. I think not, but so be it. The farmers are farming more regeneratively. Retail is slowly getting on board with this. It's certainly a term that's used more. And with social media, as bad as social media is, it is an informative thing. You can use it as a tool to become more informed.
Brilliant. Last point now, because I know we need to go, is people are listening out there. I'm going to speak to Farmer Angus. I've been here. This is the legit process. It's been running for a long time. This man's about calling. He is about purpose. So where you see farmerangus.com, buy the produce. I know there are eggs available. Just tell us what you offer, and then also where people can buy things that are going to be, truly, healthy, organic, because there's all these terms out there which we haven't discussed. But where can people buy their meat, their chicken, their eggs? Tell them.
If you are in a fortunate enough position to know a farmer, and there are definitely increasingly farmers who are supplying direct to homes, lamb, for example, and they'll cut up a beef and do a quarter of a beef. Stick with that. Okay?
But you've got to go and check them out, because you don't.
Well, of course you've got to check them out.
Or do they call? Who do they call? Do they call the?
No, there's no certification body. In answer to your question.
Okay. So where's this list of people there?
There's no list.
So how does the person out there?
There's wherever the health shop is, your local health shop. That'll be the repository.
Okay.
The supplies into the local health shops.
So we trust the local health shops.
Then there's another movement, a very powerful movement called the Good Food Clubs. Good Food Clubs. These are, most of them start off as young mummies either pregnant or having young kids. They're like, oh, I don't want to buy into the system. And they source in the food. So the Good Food Clubs.
.com, or do we just
They're all
Google
around
it?
the country.
Okay.
They're amazing. And then a lot of the independent little shops have unique suppliers who come in. The farmers market culture, there's certain places where the farmers market culture is strong, others not so strong. Our products, our cured meat, so what makes our cured meat, our pork products unique is that we're the only guys who finish our pigs outdoors, and we're the only guys who cure without adding nitrites, nitrates and phosphates. So that's sold as Farmer Angus products in Checkers and ShopRite, Checkers and Pick and Pay around the country. There are some of our shops who stock in Jackson's. We've unfortunately had to shrink our beef business back because their scale, we're not on the right scale. Eskom's absolutely crushed us with running cold rooms with backup generators, fuel costs, etc., etc. So, and then the eggs eggs is a more difficult thing to transport around the country.
Yeah.
But we do have places in Joburg called Jackson's who sell our eggs, and then down here a lot of people sell their eggs.
Brilliant.
Yeah, but people can contact me. It's farmerangus.co.za.
Okay.
I'm also on Instagram.
Correct. And you're also FACarbon.
Yeah, FACarbon.com.
Okay.
farmeranguscharbon.com.
Just to see about the carbon footprint.
The carbon footprint. If there's
emissions
farmers so the mission behind the carbon story is very simple. Like ourselves, we want other farmers to be paid for doing the right thing.
Correct.
For improving the environment. And the best way to measure that is again through carbon.
Brilliant. Well, it's the start of a relationship.
Yes.
I'm very fond of you. I respect you. I honor you. I think you're doing incredible things here. Yeah. It hasn't been easy, but someone's got to be the pioneer. And in my own life, I've been a pioneer in many times where people are trying to take you down. But I really declare favor and blessing over you that you would actually thrive, your kids, the next generation, that we'd be looking back at these small beginnings and say that we've transformed South Africa and Africa, and then the rest of the world.
No, and we can do it. It's not can regenerative agriculture feed the world. It's how does it feed the world. Yeah. And I wrote a whole blog post about it, and I built a spreadsheet about how South Africa can do it, which I'd love to talk about at some stage. But
Brilliant.
It's really, it's possible. Is it probable? Unlikely. But is it possible? We are human beings, Steve. We can manifest the most amazing world.
Yeah, that's true. Brilliant.
And thank you to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Keep going, man.
Brilliant.